controversial subjects with the facts can be tense, but we are A$AP Science here to make things make sense.
I know we already talked a little bit about how bored you are, how bored I am, you do birding. I think people generally have a negative connotation to boredom. So
Yeah,
I think
I do.
When it comes to our studies, I do think you should probably go first. But
Okay.
yeah, tell me why is boredom bad, do you think? In your personal experience, not
My
necessarily.
personal experience is like, I think I can remember saying, I'm bored out loud, like,
Out of the womb.
no, like in school and being told like, hey, like, don't be bored. There's all these beautiful things around. I think even my parents, it's like, my parents are really active. They do lots of things. It's like taught, like, you know, if you're bored, like
Find something to do.
that's your, like, not like it's your fault, but
But
it
just
was,
put some work into figuring out how to relieve your boredom.
and I think that's a bit of the ethos of me going birding. It's like, if you're bored, like, I'm like, okay, I need a whole new hobby. Like, I think actually I'm more on the extreme end of my relationship with boredom. I think I have friends who have told me like, you always do so many things. And I'm like, it's because like being bored's bad. Like, I innately think being bored is bad.
A negative thing.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Well,
I don't know why. Like,
I don't necessarily disagree, but my way to get there is I kind of want to hit boredom. For me, hitting boredom means I got to a stage. Boredom is a motivator for me. So when I get bored, then I go, okay, well, obviously I don't want to be bored. It's not that fun to be bored. So now I might go do like write music. Like, it helps me to do things that would otherwise take more effort. So obviously, like watching a movie, playing video games, easy because they're just easy fixes going on your phone. But boredom is a key to me doing something that would otherwise feel harder than doing those things.
okay, that's gonna sound insane. Like, what does it feel like to be bored? I don't know if I know what it feels like.
Wait, what?
Like, I actually am like, I don't know if I know.
That
It feels like,
is so weird, Greg.
well, because I don't know if I even need to keep talking. and
Well, you
explaining
would
that.
obviously have an essence of that feeling, or you just think you would literally prevent yourself from getting bored.
I think I might prevent myself from ever
I think
getting
you
bored.
need to try this, and you just need to put your phone away, not do anything, not allow yourself any stimulation. You'll get bored.
Okay, but wait, what? Oh my god, I'm actually like panicking. My hands
I
are
think
getting
with
clammy.
phones in general, it's given people way more anxiety around boredom. It's like
Yeah.
the second you're bored, you have this thing in your pocket or beside you that can alleviate your boredom, and so there's kind of less like anxiety feeling that comes with it now, which I don't necessarily think is the way we've definitely necessarily evolved. Like, I don't think boredom would have that same. I think you would get a really intense feeling if you did that, but I don't think that's necessarily the biological. That's like a learned condition, I think.
So can you describe to me what boredom feels like to you?
Well, I guess once I'm bored, I just am like, I wouldn't call it a pleasant feeling. It's just that the one thing, I don't want to say too many positives because my study kind of goes into the positive aspects of it. But even I'm at the point where I'm just like, okay, yeah, like I now have to go do something.
I honestly am like, I sound crazy, but I'm like, I don't know if I've ever felt that. I think I preemptively do things to avoid it so deeply. Like, I think I need to go to therapy about.
There's
like,
something
I need to
about
learn
that.
I need to be locked in a room.
Did
with
you have
nothing.
a?
I need to go to jail.
Did you have a really negative experience with boredom at some point in your life?
Imagine I started crying.
That it was like, yeah, we don't have to go deep into this.
No, I'm not.
Did you
I'm
get
joking.
triggered ever that you were like, I don't want to be bored? Because, for example, like I might intentionally try to get bored, but then I don't like sit in my boredom for so long. I then do things.
You know what? I didn't ever have video games growing up. I was never allowed I wasn't allowed more than an hour of TV. We didn't have cable. Like, there were these things kind of set up for me to like be bored. Like, I remember playing a lot of imaginary games on my own, just like writing movies in my head, like running around in the backyard, like making up like a full movie about like this like weird cape thing that would go across the earth and you become this like different realm and just like fight plants. Like I think that maybe I dealt with a lot of boredom as a kid that as an adult, it reminds me of my like relationship.
Or maybe you just
with,
have really high level skills to not become bored. Like, no one's trying to be bored. it's just like maybe you didn't have those extra stimulations, so you develop skills to not even have to get bored to do things.
Yeah.
Which is like a nice thing.
Yeah,
actually.
yeah. It just like there's this relationship I have with like food. Like my parents were very healthy and very like they would just make lots of delicious home cooked food, and like we didn't have like there was always this thing in our house like they didn't like things with packaging, so we never had those types of like delicious like Pop-Tarts and like fun. Although that was like the one thing we did have, but like those types of foods like that now that I'm older and can just go to a grocery store and buy whatever I want. Like I remember that feeling like when I was in university or like away from home was like wait, I can buy whatever I want. Like I can buy this cereal, and I went a little like wild, like over the top, that I wonder if maybe that's how like
The
something
boredom
where I am
element
now.
is,
It's like I have so much more access to things to entertain me that I'm like going ham, because as a kid, I don't know. If this is all
Well, okay,
jargon.
let's talk more about like you get into your study about the sort of negative sides of boredom first,
Okay.
and we can chat more about it from there. Because then when we talk about the positive, then I think we'll be able to have some sort of resolution around what we think
Cool.
we have been brought up to believe, and then what's good and what's bad.
So mine is gonna be a bit inflamed in the sense of negative aspects of boredom, because this study was done during the pandemic.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so it's a recent
Oh, that's
study.
interesting though. Like
yeah.
thinking about how people are bored now. Okay.
So this took place in China 1 week after their first call for quarantine across all the provinces where this survey took place. They're 1 week in to this, gonna say the word of all words, unprecedented time. So it's really interesting to look back on, because it felt very extreme the way they talked for the study. But now I'm like, we've all been doing this.
Right. at
We're
the
coming up on a
time,
year, because this was in
Wow.
January of 2000.
We could never have related at that time.
Yeah, or like it was just so interesting to see the way they talked about it as so extreme. And actually
Right.
China's like chilling now. So like they're all like, oh, remember that time? Whereas we're all like, we're in it. But it was 2,135 participants during the outbreak, where they focused on a survey about boredom. And the way that they asked them these questions were in 4 categories. It was about anxiety, stress, depression, and meaning of life.
Okay.
Which I thought was really interesting. So they ask these survey questions to that many people. This is the study. The participants don't know what the study's about, and I read all the questions. They're kind of coded in a way that you're like,
You wouldn't like put together what the study is?
you wouldn't put together, and they're actually like really interesting questions,
Okay.
especially the meaning of life part. But they did start, every study starts with like, why are we doing this? And they did say that boredom is related to obsessive compulsive symptoms, somatization, which is the physical manifestation of anxiety. So sometimes people feel physically sick or ill or have these symptoms that they can't place, but it's actually related to their anxiety. And so that's like an example of what it can cause, which I thought was really interesting. And obviously it's related to anxiety, depression, and stress. They also showed that higher boredom correlates with higher need for information and higher exploration behaviors and media use. So essentially boredom was a trigger for using the internet. It's like a bunch
especially when you don't have many other outlets to deal with, right? In a pandemic.
Exactly. And in our society now, they've done a bunch of studies relating boredom to internet use. So like that was just them being like, okay, we're like going to definitely use those past studies as we create these surveys. Mm-hmm. And then meaning of life was defined as a generally stable sense of purpose in life and an accompanying sense of fulfillment. So if you like have that, you're found as someone who like feels like they have meaning in their life. And so what they found was that after they looked at this survey, after this 1 week when people were like kind of like scared or whatever and alone and at home, they found that people were really responding by saying they were bored and that they were having boredom kick in, and it was directly related to an increase in anxiety and stress, but not depression. And then this is the really interesting part, is that the direct link to the increased anxiety and stress was due to the fact that the boredom made them go on their phone. That the boredom in this pandemic made them reach out to media sources, which predominantly was their phone, but sometimes it was their computer, sometimes it was watching the news. Was a direct result of the fact that they thought they were bored, stuck at home with nothing to do.
Right.
And so what they found was that link of boredom to media use is what created the stress and anxiety, whereas the depression that was seen in some people had nothing to do with the boredom and the increased media use. That's what they were able to parse out through like a variety of like psychological.
Just to say that the depression was unrelated.
They're like, all we can say from this is that the people who were feeling depressed within this quarantine, it was not related to their media use and boredom.
Okay.
That's just like, that's what they were able to
Interesting. It's
posit.
like people are more bored and maybe more depressed, but it's not because of the boredom.
Exactly. So it's like if we're talking about boredom today, it can make you more stressed and it can make you more anxious. And they directly said because of media use. And then this was the most interesting takeaway for me, which was that people who had a higher sense of meaning in their life were more likely in the pandemic to go on media and their phone. And
who had more sense of meaning?
Who had more. This was the finding where they were like, this was really
Weird.
interesting and not what they thought. People who had more of a sense of meaning in their life were more likely to go on media and therefore end up more stressed and anxious while bored. And they said it's their hypothesis, and they're like, we need to keep studying this, was because when you have a strong sense of meaning in your life, when something like a pandemic happens, they think you are trying to figure out how what's going on can relate to your life. You're wanting to know the information. You're wanting to understand, what does this all mean? You're wanting to figure out what your future is. Like, you're actually more likely to watch and read the news than someone who maybe doesn't have a strong sense of meaning in their life might find it easier to ignore the news and just like not necessarily cope, but like they were really trying to focus on news consumption, I guess, because they're asking those questions, but were able to stay maybe off their phone more and relate to their boredom in a different way.
Wow, I find that really odd.
Me too. And it was a really great, like well-written, fascinating study. Like, I encourage people to read it if you want to read it. And yeah, it made a lot of sense as I read it, but I think they were still like, this is just, more and more information that we're going to gather during this insane year. And just now they're like, okay, meaning of life and internet use is somehow linked.
Strong sense.
Yeah.
Wow. I don't know if I can like really connect to that finding, or I have to think about it more. And I don't know where I fall on that spectrum.
Yeah, it says that like meaning in life, people with a high meaning in life felt the need to use their media more. It is thought to try to make sense and understand what was going on. This led to increased stress.
You're saying like to create meaning out of what's happening.
Yeah, like they're just trying to create meaning likely, and then it led to increased stress and anxiety and more doom scrolling.
Oh my God. I mean, I've definitely experienced a lot of doom scrolling this year. I'm sure everyone has.
Me too. And I think of someone who like is searching for and has meaning in life and is trying to, I think meaning in life is so interesting this year. Like sometimes we go to bed and you're just like, what is this all for? Because it's like, we're just like, yeah, like it's a
life lesson.
Yeah.
It's just like, I mean, you learn those kind of life lessons when there's a loss of life or extreme change in life where you go like, you really just can't count on life to be what you think it's going to be. And that doesn't have to be depressing, but it sounds negative, obviously. And I think the pandemic has just shown that for a lot of people, you can't rely on things to always be the way you think they're going to be.
I know.
Or predict what they're going to be like. And life is not in your control, right? And so we're all creating these little bubbles and these little paths that we think we are building. But then something can come and just stop you in your tracks from literally even seeing people you love and want to be with.
It's so wild. I can't wait to I guess we already are looking at these studies. I love reading studies about now and what we're going through, but I can't wait to understand in retrospect through like science and statistics what is happening right now. Because it's like I actually don't really know what's going on.
So much to come out of this, I think. So much psychological research, so much biological research, so much like just actual research on vaccines, on like thinking of what this time and over the next 10, 20, they'll look at our generations in 30, 40, 50 years to see how we've done economically, health-wise. Like what does a pandemic of this scale do to people? Because I don't know if they did those studies in like 1918, for example. Maybe not. Now I think like they're probably starting those studies.
Oh, you mean during the Spanish flu?
For the Spanish flu.
Yeah. Sorry. I was like, that's a rip.
I was thinking of like the last kind of worldwide pandemic. That
Well,
was
everyone was like, everyone knew to wear masks. That's why I'm like, okay, come on, humans, let's evolve. Let's wear our masks. Because in 1918, everyone seemed to get it.
There were people protesting then too.
Yeah, but they really had great case studies for the places that just took it all up, wore the mask, and did well. You know what I mean? I'm like, you would have
still have that
in
now.
1980. They wouldn't think in 2020 people were like struggling to wear masks.
Yeah,
like with all the
100 years
research
later.
that we know. Like it's really sad. It's really sad.
Oh my gosh.
Also, they're gonna make really boring Hollywood movies as they attempt to
and
be like
over dramatize,
and they're stuck at home and like crickets. It's like we don't want to watch this Hollywood. Like
there's gonna be
else
like
out.
some version of Room, the movie, but it's like actually no stakes. It's just someone who like is at home.
Yeah, so many flops as they try, and everyone's just like, no, like figure something else out.
Okay, I have some really cool things to talk
excited.
about in terms of the positives, and I want to share an interesting story because I have experienced extreme boredom on a show called Big Brother, and I want to talk about that.
True.
But that when we come back from a little break.
Comment corner.
I'm so happy to have Comment Corner back because I know I made it, but I love that jingle because I kind of stole it from Jacob Collier, that harmony.
Oh my gosh! Well, I love that jingle. I love Jacob Collier. I love you. Good things all around.
Thank you. But this is a Comment Corner moment, and I'm about to talk about Sarah on iTunes left us a lovely little review. She said, "Love it. Feels like I'm hanging out with my friends, chatting about science. What a great podcast. Listening to this honestly makes me feel like I'm hanging out with my friends, chatting around, while in reality, I'm at work in a lab, mostly alone thanks to COVID. Anyway, thanks for the weekly treat for my ears."
Oh, that's so sweet.
I have a friend, Jess, if you're listening, who works in a lab, and I just know like that would be an intense experience. Like there's so much important work happening in labs, but obviously labs of all places are also going to take precautions so seriously and legitimately that I hope that this is useful in a situation where you're just kind of alone and working in your space.
Wow, thank you so much for your work, and yeah, tell your lab friends that, like I would listen to so many podcasts. If I already
know,
listened
like,
to so many, I'm like, imagine I was in a lab, I would definitely be doing that, especially
you
alone.
had like 8 hours to just like work alone and and like that kind of.
You said wear cologne. I'm like, I'm pretty
wear
sure you're not
cologne.
allowed to do that.
No. I mean, because a lot of our work is like, and maybe there is lab work that is this as well, but so much of our work is reading and watching videos and like writing scripts. I can't listen to podcasts when I do that, but I remember when I worked at a lab and was like pipetting and literally like crushing leaves and like taking samples. You can actually be listening to stuff the whole time.
Oh my gosh. Well, I mean, thank you for listening. And
I know. Thank you so much. If anyone else wants to leave iTunes reviews or even YouTube comments, like we should start using some YouTube comments to feature. Leave us a little paragraph. We can feature you, shout you out. Thank you so much. We appreciate it.
It helps our
everyone.
indie pod.
Helps our indie pod. It helps our ego. So thank you. And back to the pod.
Pippity poppity poop.
Whoa,
that was
okay, so I was gonna bring up something about Big Brother. For those who don't know, I'm sure you do if you listen to this podcast. I was on Big Brother Canada.
What do they? Didn't you have a nickname? Mitch Muffin.
Yeah, Mitch Muffin.
What was that from?
Just one of the people there just like started saying it. And then
Who? Which one?
Raul. Mitch Muffin, and then they like became my nickname in the show. But okay, so I have like a really vivid memory about this element of boredom because it's a TV show. Obviously, there are really compelling, exciting moments, competitions, like all these things that are exciting. But
Debatable. I'm kidding.
I don't even
I
mean
hate
as
Big
a
Brother.
viewer. I mean when you're living it, you're like in a competition. Of course, that's exciting.
Actually, you're right. It is very much when I'm watching, I'm thinking this is a very exciting show. It's not boring.
Yeah, but when you're there, it's over the course. Like you have so much downtime, and truly, no books, no pens, no paper, no TV, no nothing.
Oh my
like
God.
you have people around, so of course you can talk. But you start with 15 people, and it whittles its way down. And of course, you're not talking the whole time. Eventually, you're like, yeah, you don't have things
Like
to talk about.
how many hours of nothing?
Just like hundreds.
What, hundreds?
Like over the course of my time there was hundreds
Or like
of times.
how long would
Like
you go
days in
there?
a row, there would be no like. There's one or two competitions a week.
Oh my God. So
And
you
I
could
don't
go
think
days without anything.
Yeah, where you just sit around, you chat, you're strategizing, but you can only strategize so much, and you can only really have like fun games that you're trying to make up so much, and so you really come to terms with what it means to just exist
Oh
and
my
not
God.
have distractions and get used to sort of being comfortable, just kind of sitting around, maybe sitting outside when they have
Are
the
you
outside
not
section.
thinking like I'm being filmed right now? I should do something.
I think some people have that occur, but you're there so long that you
forget.
can't do that all the time. Sometimes you have the energy,
my
and suddenly you're like,
God.
yeah, let's do something fun. We're like, we're on a show, like let's play a game, let's do something that would make.
And
people
they're
laugh.
okay with like you guys like doing that because they want that.
Depends on what it is.
That's when you start a show,
They
man.
stop you sometimes from like playing
What?
games and stuff if it's like taking away from, I think, the live feeds, because some games can be too like boring to watch, right?
But there's always like that clip. I mean, I feel like I only really watched your season of Big Brother, but Survivor, where they're like, and then they started playing with sticks, and then they all like do something funny, and it's like the little brevity in the episode. Like,
yeah,
don't
but
they
that
have
can last an hour, and you have like 7.
And then they're like, okay, stop, we got the
awake.
cut. Now let's go back to being bored.
No, they don't choose you to be bored. Like it. What do you mean?
Like I'm saying, if you're telling me that sometimes they tell you can't play games.
Yeah, because they don't. If you're playing, like, not that there are board games, but there's been times when people try to like use toilet paper and make like board games, and that's not very interesting to watch.
Okay, and I'm saying
Like
they maybe get their take where they're like, oh, that's our funny little moment for the episode. Now you're done.
Yeah, they have their little things that they make more exciting,
And
and
yeah.
and then there's actual competitions. But
I get
what
why
I
people,
wanted to bring up.
Sorry, I was gonna say I get why people fall in love and have a showmance.
Oh, for sure.
it's fun.
Oh my God, the intensity of a relationship when there's no one else, and like you find one person in a house that you connect with. And
Oh my God, you should have dated
emotionally-
Raul. That would have been fun. I would have let it.
Okay, well, next time. Now I know. Okay, what I wanted to bring up specifically was that the first 2 weeks were perhaps, like, of course, you go in, you're so excited. I have never dealt with boredom like that in my life. To the degree that I remember in the first 2 weeks saying, I would never fucking do this ever again in my life. It's one of the worst experiences.
He said the F word.
Oh my God. Are we allowed to say that on this podcast?
You make the rules, hon.
I just remember having a deep moment of like, why did I do this? I've never been this bored. I'm miserable because I'm so bored. There's literally no way to relieve my boredom. Like, yeah, I've talked to everyone in this house. We've tried to play games. We've like tried to do random
Did
things.
you say it to anyone openly? Like, are you so
Oh
bored?
yeah, we would all talk about it
Okay.
all the time. We would be like, "What are we like?"
Drinking
I'm
your little
so bored.
little like Nalgene's. or
yeah, of
whatever.
water. And then I realized you would get used to that eventually. Like it was an acclimatization period
Wow.
of being used to the situation at hand, and acclimatizing from having phones and from having friends and family and from
Wow.
having TV and the internet. And then eventually I remember being like, oh, this isn't that hard anymore. I'm not that bored. And I got so used to at times just like going to a room on my own and just like sitting for a few hours and
just
like spacing
staring at the
out.
wall.
Truly.
And you felt normal by that?
And I remember,
Is that The Shining?
One
Like, did
of
you
the
go
guy-
crazy?
A little bit. But one of the guys who was in a relationship in the house, like he and another girl, were
Name names, babe.
Jared and Kelsey. So then Kelsey got voted out, and then he went through that because he did have someone to
'cause
keep
they were
him
flirting.
entertained. Yeah, and they actually were like mentally stimulating each other because it was a new relationship, all these things. And I remember the week and the second week or whatever that she left, he was like, I've never felt so bored.
And they
in
were
my
all
life.
like, Jared, catch up, bud. We've all been good through that.
I said to him, I was like, it's because we've all experienced that, but you had this thing to mentally stimulate you, and now you have to acclimatize to being bored.
Wow, having a showmance is something that
It's like
whenever I see it, I'm like, this is so stupid, as if you could ever do this. Now I'm like, oh, it's a coping mechanism.
For sure.
Huh.
For sure. And as a
Okay.
gay man, you're like, you don't even get the option.
If you could have a showmance with one person on your season, who would it have been? Oh my God, the Big Brother stands are crazy for it.
I'm not going there. There's no one. Ramsey. He was so cute.
Oh,
nice.
I have such a crush on Ramsey.
Great guy. Okay.
Oh, and he was so sensitive and would like cry, and I was
Yeah.
like, representation for straight men crying.
All right, but I
Oh,
want
I
to talk
loved
about
him.
the fact that there's research. I can't say that word.
I forgot we were talking about boredom. I was like, I just want to ask you about Big Brother more.
We can talk more about it, but let me talk a little bit about this, and then we
Okay.
can talk more about boredom in the Big Brother house.
There's
There's research to show that being bored is not always a bad thing. So it is considered one of the most prevalent emotions yet least studied, which I thought was interesting, or at least that's how this study that I was reading was like presenting it, because it is a regular emotion people experience, but like we don't study it like anger or happiness or depression or sadness, you know?
Yeah, that's true.
It's just boredness. It's just
like
this thing. It feels like the absence of something.
And no one
rather
wants to be
than-
like the one studying boredom when you could be studying anger.
And as we know, it's often associated with negative feelings or consequences, including studies which show that it can often be related to like risk-taking behavior. So when people are bored, or you think about kids that are bored or not pushed enough, right? Often there's like, you might feel this way as a teacher or somebody who taught class. It's like sometimes the kids that are actually too smart end up being a little bit deviant.
That's so funny because so many parents, when they had little shit kids, would
They're
be
like,
like,
"He's so
they'd be like,
smart."
maybe he's bored. I'd be like, no, your kid's a shit. It's so funny. Like, that's such a talking point where they're like, I'm like, no, he's actually like, I'm like, I think I'm worried that your kid might be like a little bit
They're like,
evil.
no, he's
They're
just-
like, no, I think you
he
need to
has a high
challenge him more. I'm like,
IQ.
no, this kid does not want to do science. He's just like a little piece of shit.
But did you know any kids that were just
No,
maybe
yeah.
too smart for their own good?
Yeah, but the ones that were too
wasn't
smart
all-
for their own good were not the ones that were really bad. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, you're
like
right.
I know that you are right. There were the kids who it was like, this person needs to be stimulated more, and that's why they're bored. But the ones actually acting out, and the ones whose parents were like, my little kid's just bored. I'm like, hun, your kid ain't bored. Your kid's messed.
Your kid sucks.
Yeah, like your kid
Oh my
SUQQS sucks.
God. Sucks. Okay, no, that's fair. I'm not saying that's an excuse for everyone, but boredom can cause deviant behavior.
Yeah, for sure.
But what this study found in particular was that boredom increases creativity, which I thought was interesting. So they found that boredom helped boost individual productivity on an idea generation task. So this study was actually like 3 different studies where they would create a scenario, make people bored, and see in this case.
How do they make them bored?
I honestly don't know in this moment. I kind of like, they didn't.
They like put them on Big Brother, and
Yeah,
then,
and then
like,
they say, I bet they could study so much stuff on Big Brother. Like, I'm surprised if there aren't already like actual published psychological studies using Big Brother as test experiments. So in terms of like coming up with ideas, especially what they found is when someone's given sort of a guided task, obviously, and you're bored and you have no constraints, and you're just like, what should I do? You might not be as creative, but when you're like, okay, well then you can do this task. You're allowed to like come up with creative ideas.
yeah.
The other thing
okay.
is boredom did not universally increase creativity for a product development task. Instead, only those individuals with high learning. Okay, this part's going to sound wordy, but there's certain characteristics that it's like boredom was useful for.
Okay.
There's 4 of them. So it's high learning goal orientation, high need for cognition, high openness to experiences, and high internal locus of control. People who had those 4 factors, boredom actually stimulated them to go and do other things.
Can you like,
to
what are
become
examples
creative.
of those things?
I mean, I would just be kind of making them up right now. Like I wrote those
But like,
down.
read one again.
So, for example, like high internal locus of control means somebody who can actually choose what they're going to do. Like they have the autonomy. You know, some people are just better at being like, I'm going to do this thing. So when you're bored, obviously having a high learning goal orientation would mean like I've hit boredom. That factor kicks in and I am going to now go do that.
Those are traits of people. Like some people have a high
Yes.
openness to experience.
Yes.
So if they get bored, they're going to go
They're
do
going-
something. Whereas someone who's
exactly.
like maybe more anxious, doesn't like experiences,
Yes.
is going to get bored and then not go do the
and
thing.
just waste their time.
God.
So they were saying like it does in general increase creativity, but obviously there are factors that impact what type of people actually end up being
I
productive
see.
from
So
that.
you can get bored, but if you don't have certain personality traits, you might be like, it's really painful and I don't do anything. And
Yeah,
I'm
waste
bored.
my time. I'm bored. What am I doing? So it's kind of like you can maybe boil those down, and this is just my interpretation, to like motivation, right? So
Yeah.
there's certain kinds of motivation that if you're bored, if you have that internal motivation, then you're going to do something.
I mean, okay. That's really interesting. Like, I guess that's so true. And I just had a thought of like, I found my book recently from when I was traveling, and I had just had like so many like really cool sketches, like pencil and pen sketches. And I'm like, oh, because I remember I was just on like long train rides, and I
Trying to
was
kill time,
obviously
yeah.
bored, and I didn't have a phone. And so I just started drawing, and they were good. Like it was like, oh wow.
Yeah.
Like,
And that creativity. So there you go. You
wouldn't
have
have
been
done
bored
that.
before.
But yeah, that's an interesting situation I hadn't thought about. Because when I picture traveling, I picture not being bored. But traveling is sometimes
There's
a unique
moments when you
experience
have no
where you
choice.
end up like,
You're
not
just like stuck somewhere and you have to kill time. And some people would maybe just like waste that time and then feel bad about it. But some people, if they have these kind of internal factors, the boredom can stimulate that creativity. And they had measured sort of like creative thought and creative output to show like they were actually thinking outside the box, which I thought was interesting. It wasn't just that they did stuff. They were measuring whether or not, so they said, boredom as a variety driving emotion that motivates individuals to engage in novelty seeking experiences, i.e., like they're engaging in different, often unusual ways of doing things that are unlike typical or predictable responses. That's very wordy, ultimately meaning when people had these factors and they were bored, it made them creative because they would start doing things in a way that wasn't what they would normally do. There were creative solutions, like you being on a train and being like, okay, I have to like be creative, think of something to do. I don't have internet on a phone. I'm traveling, so I can't like be on my phone. I have to find a unique way to stimulate myself. I have a
cool.
notepad.
Yeah, it's not all bad. That's true. Like that's.
And that
But
kind of
how
like,
do you get there now when you're at home and you're in a
it's
pandemic? You have your
honestly so
phone.
hard with the internet. I
Yeah.
think. And now the world's more connected than ever. Even when you're traveling, like when we were in university, if we traveled, you wouldn't have internet. But now you could travel and you could just pay your own server, or you could end it up in another country and get a SIM card. And
Yeah,
have
or you
internet.
or you go to Japan. And they're like, "Here's your Wi-Fi when you get off the airplane."
Exactly.
And you're like,
so
"Wait,
it's so
what?"
much harder.
Yeah.
But I think I've struggled with that in this pandemic because I know boredom has been a tool for me in the past.
So you're like, I want to get bored, but I have so much access to the internet that I can't.
Yeah, it's really hard. Like when
Wow.
when you get near boredom, of course your body goes, well, then I'm just going to go on TikTok. I'm just going to go on my phone and just like mitigate that boredom. And so I feel like it's been harder for me to hit that point unless I really create structure and go like, okay, no phone for the next 3 hours, no computer, no TV. I have to like sit on my bed or sit on a couch until I go, this is so boring.
Have you done that?
I have, yeah.
Wow.
But not
I'm like off doing all this
not
crazy
always
shit.
successfully because it's so easy to go, well, I'm bored. I'm just gonna check. I have to check my email.
I'm so annoyed that like another thing came along like TikTok because it's like it's so boredom sucking. It's like
Yeah.
I'm not ever gonna get bored with another
you
one.
can't be bored, yeah.
And it's so entertaining. Oh my god.
And it's so easy to switch and immediately get. It is crazy. Like when you are on a television set, you have to click through and then you have to watch for a bit to understand if it will hook you. But a TikTok is
Oh, you mean
so-
watching TV? Sorry, I thought you meant on set of Big Brother.
No,
it's like he's been on a television set,
sorry. I meant when you're flipping through the channels.
which I haven't done in years.
Exactly. Or if you're just like putting stuff on, you have to give it a bit before you know if you're going to be engaged. And so you could be like, I just think with TikTok, you flip within 3 seconds.
Oh god, it's like busting our
It's
neurons.
crazy.
Yeah, we are like I can't even imagine the impact that it has on like and I remember when I first started using TikTok, I said it before on this podcast, I threw my phone and screamed at one point because I was like, this is new to me, and it hooked me for like an hour and I didn't have control over my like I looked up and it was 9 p.m. and I started at 8 p.m. and I threw it out of horror. But now I don't throw my phone anymore because I'm
You're
just
just
like,
used
oh,
to
that's
it.
normal. And it's like
Yeah.
what you were saying with Big Brother. You get
you're
normal.
just acclimatized
You're like, oh,
to
an
it.
hour on TikTok, nothing. Because I like could have been 2.
I know. I just think like I think Veritasium has a video on boredom, and I just can't remember if I watched it. I'm wondering if it touches on this. I want to go watch that, but I do think there
It
is
does.
this sort of
Yeah.
beautiful power to allowing, like the human brain is kind of meant to get in that stage. Because, for example, of the times when I do actually meditate or just sit quietly and force myself to sort of be still, so many creative ideas come up, and I go, oh my gosh, I forgot I wanted to go do that thing, and now I'm hearing music. Like even before bed, laying in bed without a phone, I'll be like, oh my gosh, suddenly all these musical ideas are coming into my head.
Yeah.
And if I could only do that in the day, because obviously when it's nighttime, I'm tired. I'm not gonna get up and go write a song right now.
Yeah. I find that too. Like when I'm meditating in the bathtub also is when I get up and then I like go read a book and it feels so thrilling. You know what I mean? Because it's like your brain has like calmed to this place that I like get out and I'm
It's
like, oh,
like
I'm
true
so excited.
stimulation, yeah.
And I don't even care about my phone because I'm just like, I can't wait to read this book. And it's like, but in the other part of my day, reading a book feels so challenging because there's all these other things. Like, it really obviously helps you get to the place to actually like think deeply, which makes me think about what you were saying with like the idea generation and creativity and brainstorming. Being bored is so helpful. And then I just think about all those like weird like productivity dudes and like CEOs and stuff where I'm like, aren't they supposed to be making big decisions? And like, I can't imagine they're ever that bored.
No, they're optimizing on every minute.
I know, and it's
to
like
not be bored.
To not be bored.
Yeah.
But then I wonder,
know.
It's weird.
I think there'll eventually be a turner. There already has obviously been a movement against it, but to really realize, and obviously like sleep researchers know this, and people who look into cognition understand breaks. Even people who exercise and work out know it's actually when your body's resting that you're really like if you just work out all the time, you're not going to gain as much. You're not going to actually see that muscle
Wait,
growth.
what? I work out all the time. I'm kidding.
Well, there's obviously limits, but some people work out so much, and a really smart athletic person would know, and like somebody who trains well would be like, your rest time is equally as important. You will not see yourself excel as much if you're just always pushing yourself. And I think it's the same with the brain. And that's why people say vacation, time off, like, or short work week. We were just talking about from like a little while ago, like a 4-day work week, they find people are more productive.
Yeah.
Having the true time to just relax allows you to come back so refreshed.
Yeah.
And not always. Of course, every time you're not like, why don't I have all these creative ideas? But you give yourself the space to have that. And I think it is really unfortunate and sad, and I'm speaking for myself here, like that my phone consumes so much of my
phone is chips. We always say this.
Phone is
They're
chips.
addictive. They're not healthy.
I'm going to explain that because I kind of came up with that phrase because I have we talked about this on the podcast before? I have a crazy addiction to chips in the sense that if they're in front of me, I cannot stop eating them.
Especially a salt and vinegar.
Salt and vinegar, and I'll be full, disgustingly full. And there'll be other people just like leaving a bowl of chips in the middle of a room at like a party or something.
Your family.
I'm going to eat them all.
Your family's so good at leaving chips.
But I can't.
No, I know, but whenever I go to your house, actually, you know what? You're not
chocolates.
chips. It's like everything else.
It's all sweets. It's salty is our vice, right? So
You're
if
right.
it's there,
Sorry.
we're all going to eat it. Oh my God, chips go away in a second.
But your family's really good, and maybe because you know at getting a bowl of chips and then my bowl. Whereas like I'm like, get that bag out, let's finish it. Like, let's go ham.
Now that I live alone, or not alone, but now that I don't
Yeah.
have parental control, it's like I can't not eat the chips if they're here.
But phone is chips.
Phone is chips.
But it's like so much worse than chips.
Yeah, but I think it's important to remember sometimes you cannot have the willpower to overcome these companies that are intentionally trying to optimize on your attention. So
subscribe to us on YouTube, Instagram, TikTok. Make sure you follow ASAP
no,
Science.
it's hard. I just think we need to come up with rules for ourselves, and that's everyone
trying.
listening. Like we both just bought alarm clocks so we don't bring our phone into the bedroom, and that's more than just being distracted by a phone. That's like having good sleep, but.
No, I think that's a big thing for me. It's like if you're gonna wake
having
up,
spaces
wake
where
up
there
bored.
are rules. Yeah, and I want to find more rules. Like it sucks because we work on the internet that there's this like
Oh my God.
this little flip of an excuse that's like, well, I actually have to be on the internet and on my phone because I'm supposed to know and I'm supposed to be engaged with that stuff. But sometimes I do just want to like find a way to like never. I hate that I always have my phone like it's beside me right now.
Well, we're gonna do an upcoming episode about like phone vacation or something, and we're gonna look into studies about how to do it because I think I need help. So
before we end,
subscribe.
Ask me another Big Brother question because I actually like talking about it.
Okay.
And I just want to know what, say something that you really want
Okay,
to
I'm
know.
gonna ask you like a sexual one.
Okay.
So like obviously you're like trapped in this like home with people.
Yeah.
I don't know that much about Big Brother, but like how do they handle sex and like masturbation?
You mean
And,
the
like-
people or the producers?
Like the people, like when you're talking about it, like are people like, I'm so horny, like I don't know what to do, like there's cameras, like, and when like Jared or people like, do people ever hook up?
Yeah, people do.
And are they not talking with people like, are they like, should we hook up because it's being filmed?
Yeah, that happens. And
Okay, so what are I want to know conversations around that.
Well, so there was only so much that happened on my season. I do think some people potentially
Had sex?
undercovers, maybe, or at least were like giving hand jobs and stuff, but not like.
But-
I wouldn't have known at the time.
But was it on the show?
I think there's live feeds of people being like, I'm pretty sure like X is giving a hand job to Y in this scene at night.
Wow.
So like, obviously, I think the people who
That's wild.
know the show and the live feeds well, and someone was like, I'm obviously never going to like masturbate under my sheets because I know people are watching. Whereas
That's crazy.
Some people are, cast and they're not huge fans. They might have just been curious about it.
Imagine jerking off under your sheets, not thinking, and then later someone being like, "Oh, I love our little free bedrooms where there's no cameras," and they're like, "Uh-huh."
Nikki didn't know that. She would in the first 2 weeks she would just take her clothes because she was on the British version where they don't have live feeds.
Oh my God, they don't
had to
tell you?
No, they do, but she had to constantly be reminded. On the British version, she was like, "Oh, like they can't show this on TV," and so also I don't mind being naked in front of like the people here.
Okay, so like, did you guys ever talk about masturbation and sex and
A
like
little,
how to cope, or was everyone just
but
sort of
it was
like,
more outside the show, like in Jury House and then outside because the show is supposed to be mostly PG, and so I think they don't really. I think it crosses a line even on live feeds for you can talk about sex stuff, but I think there's like a point where a voice comes on and says like, "Careful, the live feeds are on." Like especially when people,
oh my God,
if people start talking,
but don't
about
they want you to talk juicy?
Yeah, but not like the Canadian version. At least I know is they have like a certain audience, and it can't become pornographic in any way. Like if even the sexual stuff, like they would if it was explicit, they would turn away from it. And even if I'm saying something controversial, like they'll flip away from it.
They're like, "It ain't Europe, kids. Keep your clothes on."
But definitely in the American one, there's been full-on sex that's happened.
What?
But not like they're under the covers, but it's like not being that hidden.
Has there ever been gay sex?
Not.
I guess because they only ever allow one gay guy,
yeah.
one gay person.
And I should say, like most seasons don't have sex. They might have. There's been like people in the shower masturbating and stuff that you can like tell they're doing that.
Oh my God!
You can't see.
Wait, but the shower it has to be off limits.
But so you can see from here up. Cause
what's here?
Like a door is
listeners?
in the way. Oh, sorry for the listeners. Is like to my chest. So you can in the shower in case I'm having a conversation with someone, they want to be able to see.
Wait,
us.
they film you in the shower from your chest up.
Yeah.
So if you're masturbating, you just duck down. This is insane.
You could do that, but then people would know. There are bathrooms with no cameras.
Okay.
But the shower is part of the larger.
So people go to the bathroom to masturbate.
You could. There is a camera in there that's never.
What?
So it's okay. We can't talk too much longer, but there's never a live feed in that one. But it's just in case like you went in there and took someone to talk privately. They're like. They told us they need a camera in there, but they said it's such a violation. They said it's always covered in the camera room, like where they have all the cameras on screens. There's always a thing covering that, so when you're using the bathroom, no one is allowed to look at it. But if I like took you and was like, I want to whisper to you in here, like they need a camera in there to capture that moment.
Oh my God, that is wild.
Anyway,
that was fun. We should do that like
Big
every
Brother
time.
gossip.
Big Brother gossip, because that's like
Behind the
fascinating.
scenes. Yeah. But thank you guys for listening. I'm curious, like, how bored you are in quarantine.
Yeah, let us know. Hashtag Sidenote podcast, and let us know if you want us to do something about like phone boredom vacation, because I think this like opened a can of worms for me.
Yeah, and I'm curious. Just suggest ideas for different podcast episodes. I love hearing ideas, and we definitely turn them into episodes. So shoot us a message, and we'll see you next week.
Peace.